Thanks for coming, especially during the blizzard. Surprised we all had school, right? But like every other show we have here, we have a sign-in sheet over there that not only is it proof that you're here for your instructors, but you can get invited if you're legible enough to the next shows, and you'll be on the email distribution list to get invited to everything. We have a face page where you can go on it, and if you like it, you can get invited to all these events just by clicking on that button. And so please go to that. It's on our art website. So you go to the homepage, go to art, go to that, go to the face thing. We have plenty of free food for you guys afterwards. So feel free to eat all that and get it out. We went through a lot of work to get it here today. And I think that's all for announcements. So please help me welcome Kristy Peet. She used to work here, how many years ago? About 3 years ago. She was here for several years, and then she got a job at College of the Mainland, which is in Texas City. So if you're driving to Galveston forever and a day from here, you'll see the metal cowls out in the field, a piece of art, and the solar panels. There's College of the Mainland, and then there's Mall of the Mainland, if you've ever seen that on the way to Galveston. So she teaches at College of the Mainland, teaching photography. So she's the photography professor there. Which is pretty exciting for me, because I have a good friend there, George Bowes, who had a ceramic show here. And Mayuko Gray runs their art gallery, and she had a show here, if you remember the calligraphy drawings. And so about everybody there is shown here now. So anyway, she used to teach here, now she teaches there. She's from SCAD, which is exciting. We send a lot of students that direction, to Kansas City and then SCAD also. So I'm going to let her take over about herself and explain what I just said, and go from there. So, welcome.
Thank you all for coming. First off, I wanted to thank Robbie and everyone here at Lone Star Montgomery for having me here for the show. Not only did I used to teach here, it's actually my very first teaching gig, so I'm happy to be back. Let's see. Okay, I also have one little shout out kind of before I start talking about this. This spiral out in the courtyard is something that I also made with David McLean while I was here. So anyway, if you happen to have ever walked by that, that's from us. Okay, so a little bit of background. I went to undergrad at Austin College, which is a small liberal arts school in Sherman, Texas, about an hour north of Dallas. My bachelor's degree is a double major in math and computer science. And I took my first photography class my junior year and just instantly fell in love. So after college, I took a semester off and took a bunch of photo classes to kind of beef up my knowledge, and then went to grad school at Savannah College of Art and Design. From there, a year later, I wound up here teaching. So I wanted to start by talking a little bit about just the technical with this show. I know a lot of students are curious about that. So all of the images in this show are shot on film with a 4x5 camera, which gives you a negative that's 4 by 5 inches. It's one of those old cameras that you go like under the hood. But the cool thing about having a negative that is that big is you can blow them up really, really big like this and still get like crazy amounts of detail. So like with this one, you can still read like the pages of the book that are torn out. 2 summers ago, I spent pretty much my entire summer and way more money than I should have building a color darkroom, because ever since I've started photography, I've always put in the darkroom. I love being in the darkroom. But it turned into a huge money pit and kind of a pain in the butt. So this is the first work that I've actually been outputting digitally. So it's all shot on film, scanned in, and then outputted on inkjet printer, which is exciting because it gave me the opportunity to print a lot larger than I would have been able to with the color darkroom. So the series is called Introvert. I am interested in personality types and why some people tend to act the way they do versus other people. I have a studio at Box 13 Art Space, and I have a studio mate there. She's a photographer also. She and I are both very introverted. And so one day we're at this opening that we had, shows downstairs, and she and I are like huddled up in our studio, like avoiding everybody. And she recommended this book to me called The Introvert Advantage. And she's like, this book is fantastic, you should read it. And of course I like my studio mate and I trust her, so I went and bought the book. And I started reading it, and it is like crap. I hated it. So I was like, I don't want this entire book to go to waste. So I wound up tearing out all the pages of it, and it actually became the first photo from the series, is the pages from that book. So when I was working on the series, I did a lot of research on what makes an introvert, and of course the big thing is how someone recharges and like regains energy. Introverts need a lot of alone time. where extroverts like social situations and need people to recharge. So each of the images is kind of based on a different introvert trait. When I was doing the research, there were some things that I was surprised about, like apparently an introvert trait is like dreading returning phone calls or screening phone calls. And I totally do that. I hate answering my phone. I hate when the voicemail light is on. But I didn't know that was an introvert thing, and so that was kind of interesting to learn about, and that's what I was thinking about with that particular picture over there. What else? Hang on, I made some notes so I said everything I want to say. Oh, right, so one other kind of interesting thing with this series, I actually started working on it about 2 years ago, like I said, with this particular photograph. About a year ago, I kind of got sidetracked by this other photography series that is actually up at Lone Star Tomball right now called Evidence. And I hung that up last month. Once that was hung up, I was like, oh no, I need more pictures for this other show that's happening in Montgomery in a month. So a lot of these images are very, very recent. About half of them were shot about 2 years ago. The other half were shot within the last couple months. So it's a mixed bag. Hopefully you can't tell, other than the dates on the sheet, which ones are new and old, and they integrate fairly well together. I think that's it. I want to leave a lot of time for questions, because I know that's more interesting, hopefully. So, do y'all have questions? Yeah.
What's your favorite picture?
I have two. My favorite are these two. I like this one because it's like shell on the person, and it's the first one, so it's, kind of special. And then I really like this one a lot. This is one of the very newest ones. And every single posted on here is actually a list that I have made in the last 6 months, so it's not like fake list making at all. And so I liked gathering up all those lists and finding out exactly how obsessive I actually am about that sort of thing.
I have a question. Sure. So if you're calling yourself an introvert, and here we are, we're privy to all of these, this is your private to-do list.
Yeah.
So we're able to read all your to-do lists, no
Yeah.
matter how it's not. So that's a quality of being an introvert, or?
Well, the list making is, and kind of being really regimented and organized. The fact that everybody's looking at my personal to-do list is actually really uncomfortable, as is talking about the work itself. I get a lot, so I teach photography, so I talk at people, many hours a week, and I'm fine with it, but it's very different talking about your own photographs, especially when they're based on something like really personal.
Can you talk about this?
Sure. So the ceramics go along with it. They are collectively called introverts. And the idea with that was I wanted to make these kind of geode-like forms that are really kind of rough and textury on the outside. And then whether you can actually see the interior or not, they're all really, really shiny and highly glossed on the inside. So the idea is what you see on the outside is not necessarily what you get on the inside. And I don't know a ton about ceramics techniques, but for you guys that are in ceramics classes, they're raku fired.
Is that like a raku?
Were there more pictures than just the ones that we see here? Like, did you pick these pictures for a reason?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a few more, like not a whole lot, like maybe 2 or 3. The thing with 4x5 is that it's so labor intensive to make just one photograph. The camera itself is really big and bulky. It takes a long time to set up. Each of the scenes takes a long time to set up, and so I really, really think them through before I shoot them. So when I do shoot them, I have a really, really good idea of what I want, and so there's not a lot that gets rejected after the fact. I do a lot of pre-editing before I even start working. Yeah.
How'd you make that picture?
Fishing line. There's a thing that goes in the photo studio called a jobo arm that's basically like a metal rod, and so there's fishing line hanging from them holding up, and then I photoshopped it out.
Oh, okay.
It was still kind of a pain though, because it's windy in my studio, and so the pages would blow, and so I had to wait for them to be facing the direction that they should be. Yeah.
What was the idea of them?
Which one?
Second one.
The jars? The idea with the jars is they're different levels of frosted. So the first one is completely see-through. The last one has a lot more coating on the inside, so it's harder to see what's happening on the inside. So it's kind of about how much of yourself you reveal to other people and how much of the inside that you can see. Yeah.
Would that go with the suitcase one as well?
It's similar. Yeah, So when I'm working on any photographic series, there's some that are really, what's the right word? Like really deep, really connected to the theme. Like with this one, for example, like the in-out box is like a lot more obvious. And so I had a specific idea that I'm shooting for. With that one, is kind of more just the feeling behind it. So that one I thought of the image first and then kind of thought of a way to tie it in. Versus that one I had the idea of what I wanted and I was like, oh, what image can I make that'll go with that? So I don't really have a strict tie-in for that. I like the idea of it being kind of this compartmentalized thing, the idea of what you carry with you, but it's not as strictly tied to an introvert trait as some of the others.
And what kind of trait does a balloon
Smothering social situations. So it's like this party's collapsed on you and you're trying to claw your way out.
Horrible ideas.
Yeah.
Like an artist pop?
Kristy,
Yeah.
on the one with the balloons, how long do you think you set that up?
How long did that take? So my mom is here. She helped me blow up the balloons. We nearly passed out. It took me 20 minutes maybe? So there was 2 of us blowing up balloons for about 20 minutes. And then we had to build like a little corral so they wouldn't blow away.
Well, okay, and how long do you think you get the lighting right so that you got the reflections and everything?
Not a ton. I have a pretty consistent lighting situation that I always use. I have 2 studio strobe lights, and it's usually either 2 from each side or 1 and a reflector. I like soft light, and especially in these photos, so I don't do a lot of like crazy lighting things. So it's a pretty standard setup for me, so it didn't take very long at all.
What about the conch shell piece?
So the shell is kind of the idea, it's kind of similar to the other one I was talking about a minute ago. I don't remember. Somewhere to hide, like your home.
Like a hermit.
Like a hermit, kind of, yeah. Again, I was talking about the introverts. Again, like kind of pretty things happening on the inside and kind of rough around the edges. Huh? The cup? So it's tea. Apparently it looks like coffee. Everybody says that. No, I don't drink either, and so I don't really know what tea is supposed to look like. But it's kind of the idea of the alone time thing. How introverts need to charge with alone time, and that's this little quiet moment that you would take to recharge. The boxes? The idea of, again, a lot of them have similar things. The idea, again, about compartmentalizing things and how you can get into certain of those boxes and you can't get into others of them. So different things that are accessible and things that aren't.
I know you explained how this one was set up, but can you tell us more about the underlyings behind it?
This one?
Yes.
Yeah. So the text on the page, let me start at the beginning actually. So my idea with that is often I suppose other introverts will say things and immediately wish that you could take it back. And so that's the arm gesture, is like I'm saying these things and I'm like, no, I don't want to actually be saying them. And the text on the pages is actually listing about 26 different introvert qualities written over and over and over again. So it's the idea of taking back words after they've been said. Thanks.
Is it important what the book is on the book?
Yeah, it is. It's focused so that you can definitely read some of the pages and not some of the other pages. So it's that book that started the whole series, The Introvert Advantage. And so I like the irony of using this book about introverts as kind of a shell to like contain an introvert.
Is this an ongoing thing, or are you making more of these, or is this it?
I haven't in a long time. It's not something that I wouldn't make again. I just haven't done any recently. I like them. I will probably eventually go back to them.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I have a question about process, because normally you shoot film, you develop pictures with a color darkroom, but these are unique, you said. And you pointed out that one image you used Photoshop to remove the Java or
The strings.
yeah. Do you think that that's going to change the way you work, having access to that kind of thing? Has it in this? Is that the only image that has Photoshop manipulation?
Yes. And when I shot that, I knew that I could get rid of them in the darkroom and I purposely made the background on that one black because I knew I could just burn it in and get rid of it if I needed to. It was kind of nice being able to get rid of it, to be honest. Photoshop is pretty handy. No, none of the others have. Actually, I take that back. It's already changed the way I thought. When I was shooting this one, there's a big hole in the lists where I am because I didn't have that many lists. And so when I was shooting, I was like, oh, I gotta be so careful that I'm like, my body is actually blocking this hole in the lists. And then in the back of my mind, it's like, but it doesn't really matter because I could just Photoshop into list right there. I wound up not having to. It's lined up the way that it should be. But I guess it's already thought about the way, it's already changed the way I think about shooting. But it also, I felt very like dirty printing this, like I'm cheating on the darkroom. So I still haven't come to like mental okayness with printing digitally yet. Yeah.
Do you think Photoshop takes away the artistic quality?
Oh, that's a loaded question. No, not necessarily. No, I think it's totally personal preference. The reason I like printing in the darkroom is that it feels more hands-on, like I'm making the thing itself. And so it's less about sitting at the computer pushing buttons, but more about the physical, moving that paper from tray to tray to tray. But I don't think that, no, I don't. And I think people think about that with photography, with Photoshop being invented. But if you look at the history of photography, there's always been darkroom tricks. There was a show at the Museum of Fine Arts like a year ago called something like before Photoshop, I don't know. Anyways, this entire show of darkroom tricks that people had, you know, made ghost images, made images of people that didn't have heads, combined images to make people look like they're jumping off buildings. And so people, I think, a lot of times are like, oh, Photoshop, it's going to make your picture fake. When in reality, people have been doing that as long as photography's been invented. So while my personal preference is the darkroom and not manipulating files, I don't think that there's anything wrong with other people doing that.
The two suitcase photos connected?
No.
Go in a girl, come out of one?
Not necessarily. Obviously, it's the same suitcase, same person. I didn't mean them to tie together any more than any other two do.
Would you ever do a sequel, like a binge being an extrovert or anything?
Probably not, just because my photos always relate to me. They're so selfish. They're always relating to what's going on with me. And I have no experience being an extrovert, so probably no, I wouldn't.
What was your
Evidence. Tell us a little about that one. So the vast majority of my work is about intellectualizing some subject, whether it be personality traits or hypochondria or whatever, like things that are happening with me. The series at Tomball is a lot more emotionally based. It was about an event that happened in my life that was kind of emotionally scarring a little bit. And so it's kind of an emotional response to that situation.
What was that again?
Go to the show.
Kristy, in your manipulation of using Photoshop, is it just concerned about, well, I need to remove a wire, or are you attempting to emphasize an aesthetic element within the design?
No, it was just remove the wires. And when I shot all of these, I had no intention of printing it digitally. That actually came far after, and so it was a change that I knew that would be very easy to make in the darkroom. And so it really was just to remove those fishing lines that were coming from the corners of the pages. When I envisioned the photo, I knew that I wanted them to look like they were floating, and they didn't look like they were floating when you see the fishing line.
Are all the models the same people?
With the exception of this one, yes, they're all me except for this one.
Is that the mom?
It is. She's a very good sport.
Any other questions? Is the show still on at Tomball as well?
It is. It's up through the end of spring break, but it's closed for spring break, so I guess it's up there tomorrow
Right.
or Thursday.
So this show is up for the month.
Yeah.
And I encourage you guys to come often and see it. The more you look at it, the more you'll see nuances that you maybe didn't see before. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm sure Kristy will stick around a little while, eat the food, talk to Kristy. And thanks for coming.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.